He had no memory of the day his life began to change. As an infant, barely a few weeks old, he had been left in the cold corridor of a small orphanage on the outskirts of São Paulo. Wrapped in a thin blanket, his cries echoed through the night until a caretaker discovered him at dawn. No note, no name, no explanation. Just a baby abandoned with nothing but questions that would haunt him later in life. For the next few months, he lived in the care of the orphanage staff. They called him Daniel, a name chosen at random, but one that would stick forever. His early days were filled with the sounds of other children, the constant bustle of volunteers, and the unshakable uncertainty of what would become of him. But fate had a way of intervening when least expected. One afternoon, a wealthy couple, Helena and Roberto Carvalho, walked into the orphanage. They were influential business owners in the city, respected for their empire in the textile industry. What the world didn't know, however, was that behind their grand gates and elegant lifestyle, they carried a silent pain, years of trying and failing to have children of their own. The moment Helena laid eyes on baby Daniel, her heart skipped. She reached out to hold him, and as the baby grabbed her finger tightly, something inside her broke open. Roberto watched silently, his stern expression softening as his wife's eyes filled with tears. Within weeks, paperwork was finalized. The Carvalhos opened their luxurious home to Daniel, offering him not only a family, but also a future that no one in that orphanage could have imagined. Golden chandeliers, marble floors, private tutors. The world of wealth became Daniel's reality. Yet even as a child, something inside him always felt incomplete. At night, when Helena kissed him goodnight, he would sometimes whisper, "Did someone else ever kiss me like this before?" But no answer ever came. He was too young to understand the void inside him, too innocent to grasp that the very love he longed for might still exist, somewhere out there. But life was just beginning to write the story that Daniel would one day have to face. And the unanswered questions of his past would not remain buried forever. If you were in Daniel's place, would you want to know the truth about your origins, even if it could change everything? Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this story. Daniel grew up surrounded by everything money could buy. His bedroom was larger than most apartments in the city, filled with toys imported from abroad. He studied at one of São Paulo's most prestigious private schools, chauffeured there each morning in the back of a sleek black car. To outsiders, he was the picture of privilege, the adopted son of one of the wealthiest families in Brazil. But inside, Daniel often felt like a guest in someone else's world. Helena and Roberto loved him in their own way, providing stability and opportunities, yet they rarely spoke about the circumstances of his adoption. Whenever young Daniel asked, "Where did I come from?" Helena would smile gently and say, "You came straight from heaven, filho." And while the answer brought comfort for a time, it never silenced the quiet ache in his heart. As he grew older, the feeling only deepened. At school, classmates sometimes whispered about his darker hair and different features. "He doesn't look like the Carvalhos," they'd say when they thought he couldn't hear. Daniel pretended not to care, but the words stuck to him like invisible scars. He found solace in small rituals, staring at his reflection in the mirror, wondering whose eyes he had inherited, or lingering by the orphanage whenever Helena drove by, secretly hoping one of the caretakers might recognize him. He even kept a hidden journal under his bed where he wrote questions he couldn't ask out loud. Who held me first? Did they love me? Why did they let me go? Helena noticed his growing distance. One evening, when Daniel was about 12, she found him awake past midnight staring out the window at the stars. "Meu amor, what troubles you?" she asked softly. Daniel hesitated, then whispered, "Do you think someone out there misses me?" The question broke Helena's heart, but she forced a smile and pulled him close. "You are exactly where you belong." Still, the doubt never disappeared. By the time he turned 18, Daniel had everything: wealth, education, connections. But he also carried an emptiness that money could never fill. What he didn't know was that, at the very same time on the other side of the city, a family who shared his blood still lit a candle every year on his birthday, never giving up hope that one day they would find him again. By his mid-20s, Daniel had built a promising career in architecture, admired for his sharp mind and elegant designs. To everyone else, his life looked flawless, but success only made the silence about his past grow louder. Each milestone, graduation, his first job, even moving into his own apartment, reminded him of the invisible people who weren't there to see it. One evening, after a long day at work, he found himself digging through the old box of adoption documents Helena had kept hidden in a drawer. Most of the papers were official records, dates, signatures, the legal approval of his adoption. But one detail caught his eye, a single line in faded ink, mentioning that he had been left at the orphanage with a cloth embroidered with the letter M. It was the first tangible clue he had ever found. Who was M? A mother? A father? A sibling? That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The next morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He would search for his roots, no matter how long it took. The journey was not simple. He visited the orphanage, now run by new administrators, only to discover that many of the old records had been lost or damaged. The current director, a kind woman named Teresa, tried to help, but could only offer fragments of the past. "I remember the night you were brought in," she said, "but I never knew who left you there, only that you were found before dawn." Frustrated but not defeated, Daniel turned to technology. He registered his DNA on global ancestry websites, hoping for a match. He posted on online forums, sharing the few details he had. He even considered hiring a private investigator, though part of him feared what the truth might reveal. His adoptive father, Roberto, grew wary of the search. "Why dig into the past?" he asked sternly. "We gave you a life people can only dream of. Isn't that enough?" Daniel listened, but remained silent, torn between loyalty to the family that raised him and the need to uncover the one that gave him life. Then one evening, as he was scrolling through emails, his heart stopped. A notification appeared from the DNA database. Potential relative match found. Daniel stared at the screen, his hands trembling. He had no idea yet that this match would unravel decades of unanswered questions and lead him straight to the family who had been searching for him all along. The email led him to a woman named Mariana, who lived only a few hours away in a small town outside São Paulo. The DNA match indicated a strong possibility that she was his biological cousin. Heart pounding, Daniel wrote to her, explaining who he was and sharing the details of his adoption. Her reply came within hours. "Daniel, we've been searching for you for over 20 years. Mariana revealed that his biological family had never abandoned him willingly. On the night he was taken to the orphanage, his young mother, Maria, had been desperately ill. Daniel's father, overwhelmed and misled by a neighbor who insisted the child would be better off in institutional care, made the most painful decision of his life. But the very next morning, regret consumed him. By the time he returned to retrieve his son, the records had already vanished and Daniel was gone. For decades, Maria and her husband searched tirelessly. They reported to police, posted flyers, and even visited orphanages across the state, clinging to hope. Every year on Daniel's birthday, they lit a candle by the window, whispering prayers into the night. One day, Maria would say, "He will come back to us." Daniel sat frozen as Mariana's words spilled across the screen. Tears blurred his vision. All this time, he had believed he was unwanted. All this time, he thought he had been left behind. But the truth was the opposite. His family had never stopped fighting for him. When he finally spoke to Maria on the phone for the first time, her voice cracked with emotion. "Meu filho, is it really you?" she asked, sobbing. Daniel could hardly breathe. "Yes, it's me." The days that followed felt surreal. Plans were made for them to meet in person. Helena and Roberto watched quietly, both proud and fearful. They had raised him, loved him, and given him a life of privilege. But now they faced the reality that his heart was about to be pulled toward the family he had always longed for. And then came the moment Daniel had imagined his entire life. Standing at the doorway of a modest home, he saw a woman waiting, her hair grayer than he had pictured, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with disbelief. Behind her stood a man, older but strong, his eyes brimming with the same tears. Daniel took a step forward. The woman whispered, "Daniel?" And before he could answer, she wrapped him in the embrace of a mother who had never let go, not even for a second in her heart. For the first time, Daniel felt whole. But this reunion would bring not only joy, it would also raise new questions about love, loyalty, and the meaning of family. The reunion was nothing short of overwhelming. For hours, Daniel sat between his biological parents, listening to the fragments of stories they had saved for him. Maria showed him the tiny cloth embroidered with the letter M, the very one mentioned in his adoption file. She had sewn it herself the night he was born, a symbol of hope that one day, no matter where life took him, he would find his way back. Every word, every tear, every touch felt like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Yet, as beautiful as it was, Daniel also felt the pull of the other family that had shaped him. Helena and Roberto had been his protectors, his guides, the reason he had access to the opportunities that allowed him to stand there today. Without them, this reunion might never have been possible. Days later, Daniel decided to bring both families together. Nervous and unsure of what might happen, he invited Maria and her husband to the Carvalho mansion. Two worlds collided that evening. Luxury and modesty, wealth and simplicity, adoptive and biological. For a moment the silence was heavy, but then Maria stepped forward, taking Helena's hands. "Thank you," she whispered through tears. "You gave him the life I could not." Helena, her eyes glistening, replied, "And you gave him the love I could never replace." From that night on, something extraordinary began to happen. The two families, instead of competing for Daniel's heart, learned to share it. They celebrated birthdays together, shared meals, and created a new, blended version of family that defied convention. Daniel finally understood the meaning of his journey. His life had been a bridge between two worlds, one of comfort and one of resilience, one that raised him, and one that never stopped searching for him. He realized he wasn't defined by the question of who he truly belonged to, but by the love that connected them all. Standing in front of both families one evening, Daniel said, "I used to feel incomplete, like half of me was missing. But now I see, I was never missing. I was simply waiting to be found by all of you." The room fell silent, tears streaming down every face. And in that silence, the truth became undeniable. Family is not about wealth or circumstance, nor about blood alone. It is about love that persists, love that waits, and love that forgives. Daniel's story became a living reminder that no matter how far life separates us, love will always find a way back. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment below. Would you be able to forgive the past as Daniel did? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more emotional adoption stories that prove love always finds its way home.